This was found literally on the side of the road by a man named Daniel Toben, who runs the Earth Stewards. He cleans up trash along the roads and in the woods nearby, basically does a pollution cleanup company, a nonprofit, as his goal for the organization. And one of the things that he brought us was this old Apple. And this is from the early 2000s. This is a PowerMac G5. It's a dual-core CPU system. Actually, it's a dual CPU single-core system. So it's a dual-core setup. 2 CPUs in there. They had a few different versions of this. One was water-cooled. It was the super high-end model. We didn't get that, but we did get the dual-socket, dual CPU solution, which is kind of cool. So our goal today is going to be to refurbish this because Daniel would like a system for basically a sort of showroom or a showcase of the stuff he's found that he's reclaimed to show off the types of e-waste that people just discard on the side of the road and how it can be improved and either repurposed or at least cleaned up. So we're going to be cleaning up the system and the case. The case in itself is extremely interesting because love Apple or hate them, one of the points Patrick made was that this case would still look like a modern Apple design even all these years later. And it's actually an interesting case to potentially modify for ATX. So this is what we're going to be working with today, refurbishing an old PowerMac from the side of the road. Before that, this video is brought to you by Thermal Grizzly's Conductonaut liquid metal. Conductonaut is what we've used in all of our liquid metal and delid thermal tests, capable of dropping CPU thermals significantly when replacing the stock thermal interface. Lower CPU thermals don't just allow better overclocks, but also lower noise levels because the transfer efficiency is increased. The mix of gallium and indium makes for a thermal conductivity of 73 watts per meter Kelvin, outclassing traditional pastes significantly. Learn more at the link in the description below. So this is continuing our theme of working with some e-waste and just either properly disposing of electronics or refurbishing and repurposing them. One of the other groups we worked with recently was Camden Institute. So we worked with them on getting parts for our Cyberpunk mod, which Cyberpunk 2077's theme for their modding contest was the future is recyclable, I think it might have been reusable, but that was the theme of their contest. So Daniel's work fits in pretty well with that. And I'll link his GoFundMe page below. It's mostly a one-man operation, but he gets a lot of volunteers together, does a fantastic job cleaning up the area and removing just litter from the side of the road or from neighborhoods, woods, whatever. And it's amazing the amount of electronics he finds. But this is the first one he got that we could actually do something with. So the PowerMac is in a pretty poor state. If we look it over a little bit closer here, you'll see that the side of it's mostly just going to be dirt and just general crud from outside. There were some spiders in here that we saw earlier, so hopefully we're not disturbing too many homes. And then the worst damage is actually on this side. You see it keeps tipping. And this is something that I'm going to work with Patrick on maybe figuring out if we can fix. But that's pretty beat up, so that's when it must have been tossed out of the truck or whatever it was thrown out of. We do actually have another one of these cases that we, purely by coincidence, found at Camden when we were there working on the Cyberpunk thing. So we wanted to, we could just replace the panel here, because this, the bottom part that's damaged, so this isn't like a full unibody thing, but the paneling starts here. There's a split for this side panel, and then it continues this way and wraps under. But once we replace that panel, it's basically done. So what we're going to do instead is see if we can get this into a good enough state to use again. So now that we've talked about the basics of this, let's cut away to asking Daniel about where he found this and the context for why a once extremely expensive computer was on the side of the road. It's even still got a case that we can, I kind of want to strip that Apple logo off of there and also modify it for ATX, but it's something that, it's a system he wants, so we'll do what's appropriate for his showcase. But let's cut over to talking with him and learn more about it. What's the story with this? Why is this even here?
Dirty or, yeah. It's, so this whole computer I found one afternoon cleaning up the side of a road that was a pretty nondescript road halfway between Chapel Hill and Durham. And it was just like 10 feet off the road, turned over on the ground. So it's not like it was even hidden deep in the woods or
No,
something.
It's not. It was there was other trash there, there was food containers and like a vacuum cleaner. But it was, obviously, I guess intentionally littered there.
Right.
And
So I don't know the backstory on it at all.
So this thing, we'll talk about this a little bit more later in the video too. We're going to open it up today and then I'll work with Patrick and do some refurbishing on this, see if we can get it working. But I did some brief initial research. I think this is I want to say PowerMac, but it's for our audience, Power PC architecture. And that's cool because it's really rare. So this is an architecture that, for CPUs that IBM kind of built and specialized. And there aren't a lot of them out there. This is probably early 2000s from what we could tell. We don't know if it works. You haven't plugged it in or turned it on, right?
No, I haven't.
And I haven't either. So I think the plan for this is going to be, although I want to plug it in right now and see if it works, I'm afraid that because it was left outside, and I mean, it's, there's damage.
Doesn't stand up right.
it may have been thrown, I don't know.
Yeah.
So we're going to pull it all apart and see what kind of shape it's in. But do you have any idea why stuff like this, I mean, how often do you find things like full computers or laptops or...
Yeah.
You sent me a photo of a sound card once.
Yeah, you'd be really surprised. I think in the case of the sound card, I think that stuff is actually spent so long outside that it's just broken out of like a computer that was littered. But I think most of the time people they just kind of disregard the impact that they're making and they choose to, toss stuff rather than dispose of it properly. So we've always taken all of the electronics to the local convenience center that recycles these things. They, at our one in my hometown, they have, waste oil, waste electronics, light bulbs, paints. They're all separated, and we just take the electronics there because I don't have enough experience to do things with them myself. So I don't, and then the other thing too is that in the case of like these phones, I don't know that there's any value in trying to find an owner of a phone that is more brown than black, or it's been sitting in the mud for like a few months, if not longer.
Oh, there's not even a battery in this one. Also, to your point, I don't know that there's a point trying to find an owner to a phone that's like over a decade old.
I have found like Apple electronics that was still on.
Oh, really? So recently lost.
So do our best to return.
Must not be the newest stuff though, because they have new policies to kill the battery as fast as possible.
Interesting.
But that's just Apple. Let's pull. I'm going to move this for a second. We're going to look at the phones and the laptop, and then we'll put this back up here.
All right.
Have you ever found stuff that is newer and decent or usable condition, like a laptop, except not quite like that?
Yeah, actually, we did one cleanup that was by a stream that Owasa owned. So the water authority owned the land that the stream was on.
Okay.
And we found a laptop that was owned by the water authority, and so it did have dirt on it. It had dirt on the outside and not the inside. And I actually, because it had a label with a phone number on it, I brought it back to them.
Oh, okay.
And
so I guess they were doing a survey or something, and
they said that the guy had driven away with it on top of his truck and it had fallen off. Yeah, they were all on the sides of roads.
Okay.
I mean, if they're older phones, but they look like they've only been littered for like a year or less, then to me it seems like people were just noticed that their phone was old, still had their old one, and just chucked it out the window.
Yeah, like they left it in their car. They went and got a new phone, and then they threw their old one out the window. I don't know how that happens, but don't litter, I guess. Or if you do, at least give him money so that he can pick it up later for you. Like I said, this is an older Mac. I'm not really super familiar with Macs to begin with. It looks really clean inside in some areas. At the front, we've got some corrosion or oxidation. And then there's obviously a lot of dirt around the outer edges and any of the grooves. The G5 covers, I think this is for the cooling solution. Some of these were dual socket systems. I don't know yet if this is dual CPU or not. But G5 covers look really good. The case looks really, I mean, we might be able to actually do something with this. We'll try, and I don't really know exactly what we can do with this. We could at least like re-secure it to the front. The dirt we can clean out. The components we'll individually test, and then I would love to be able to adapt this to fit a modern computer, but we'll see how proprietary it is. Apple did a lot of proprietary stuff then and now. But this is probably early 2000s, maybe 3 or 4, 2005 latest, I think. And if we're able to clean this thing up, I mean, I don't know if you could really do much with it from a computer standpoint, but you could at least use it as like a showpiece of, here's what I found outside. Right?
Be awesome, yeah.
Here's what I found on the side of the road. Let's see. Oh, there's a spider in there. Well, Patrick and I will get started on cleaning this. In the meantime, so you've got a GoFundMe page that's up, and stuff that you purchased already with some of the money you got from GoFundMe was specifically a used truck, so you could do more efficient cleanup.
So yeah, we do like 5 times the amount of cleanup that we used to do.
How many bags did you say you've done? Trash bags you've filled?
So in the last year, we've cleaned up 3,000 trash bags, 225,000 pounds of waste cleaned up.
That's insane.
Cleaned up like 2,500 tires.
Oh wow, okay.
So if you add that plus any appliances and furniture and stuff too, it comes out to be like about that amount.
You said you've been doing this like 10 years now?
Yeah.
Something like that?
Yeah. So yeah.
What started that?
I was a student in college, and I was depressed about a stream that was on campus because of the amount of plastic bottles that it was filled with.
Yeah.
And I cleaned that up, and they put me in the newspaper for it, and then I just got excited about this thing like since then. So.
Yeah. So 10 years, and you're still working. Is it multiple jobs or one job plus this?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm a manager at a sandwich shop is like my main gig.
Right.
Yeah. So.
But I feel like there's potential to turn this type of thing into full time too.
Yeah, it would be awesome.
So, yeah, that's I guess the initial, not really tear down, but just taking the panel off, taking a look at it. We're gonna do some cleanup. Like I said, Daniel's got a GoFundMe page. If you want to help him out, we've given some money there as well, and I'll go ahead and do a match. We'll do a match up to $1,000 for anyone who wants to give on your GoFundMe. I'll match that, and then we get up to at least 2. So
wow.
So go check that out. But Patrick and I are going to work on this, so we've got a lot of work in front of us, I think, to get all the dirt out of here. Thank you for bringing it in.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
We'll check in with you at the end of the process of all this.
Awesome. Sounds great.
All right, so Patrick's going to join for this, and unfortunately for you, do most of the cleanup work as well, because I've got to work on some reviews, but we'll get it started. So you looked up some more information on the system. Mm-hmm. Do you know the year?
This one is 2005. Ours specifically was produced from June 2004 to April 2005.
Okay.
Which they only made PowerMacs for, or G5s for about 3 years, from 03 to 06. This is the last generation of computers that Apple made with IBM Power PC processors before they switched over to Intel boring old x86.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I'll let you get started. Right. I gotta go write this thermal take news item.
I think I'm okay with spiders.
Just let them outside. I'm fine with spiders. Let them in the bathroom. We need stuff for the next disappointment build. Maybe by December they'll have a brood of spiders for our
Oh boy.
ASRock Z490 motherboard. All right, good luck.
Oh, this is going to be fun to put back in. Well, that works. I hope that's not mold, but if it is, I'm not sure what the effects of mold are on RAM. So this system should have come with 256 megs of RAM total to 128 meg sticks, but it looks like somebody has added in 256 meg sticks. The system supports up to 4 gigabytes of RAM. It is a 64-bit system. It only supports 4 gigabytes because there are only 4 RAM slots. The higher end models had 8 RAM slots and supported 8 gigabytes. Yep, so we have 2 128 meg sticks and 2 256 meg sticks. And these are all Samsung. So that looks like a normal 24-pin ATX connector. It would be nice if it is, because I have very little faith that the power supply is still working. Power supply is the lowest component in the system, so potentially has been filled with water. There's an onboard reset button. We have jacks for wireless and Bluetooth antennas, optical audio, normal USB 2.0 FireWire, normal Ethernet, and then a 56K modem built into the system. I think this pin here is what was causing issues. Hopefully get that out of there. According to what I have read, it should just be hooked onto several posts. Oh, good Lord. Okay, so working as intended. This right here is just a tamper seal, basically. It's a permanent plastic pin that keeps this cover from being slid off until you mangle it brutally with a Swiss Army knife. And then these 4 posts here just hold the cover on, and you ideally slide it out, but there's been some damage to the back of the case here, and it does not slide as cleanly as it should. So these are just 2 tower coolers with no fans on them. The fans are here and in the back. Spider eggs. That's fun. Right there. There's also a spider. Unfortunately deceased, or fortunately for me. Now we've moved on to an area that Apple definitely does not want you to mess with. These CPUs are not upgradable at all, so there wouldn't really be any reason for a user to take this apart. So at this point, we need Torx bits because Apple does not want us to take these off. Get out of the way, dead spider. The issue here is there are screws here that are inaccessible, and these little add-on heat sinks on the end should be removable. I'm just not quite sure how. Each of these heat sinks is only mounted with 3 screws at 3 of the corners. They did not put any screws right here in the middle corners. The issue is that we have Allen head screws that are inset deeply into this heatsink, and we didn't have any tools that were long enough and also narrow enough to get in there. So after a brief interlude, we are back with the correct tools, sort of. This is a drill bit, but it'll work. Oh, that's a much larger dead spider. You can get a shot of that ninja. It's inside there.
Should be in the tray.
Andrew's a wildlife photographer now. So this is our CPU daughter board. These are non-upgradable, unfortunately, but did I just drop the spider on the table? No, it's right there. Jesus, that's a large animal. This is presumably a copper cold plate that is mounted on the actual CPU here. I don't think we're going to take this assembly apart. Surely that's supposed to be there, right? They wouldn't just... Well, whatever. So, one more to go. Yeah, Jesus.
What was it?
I took it out and there's a dead spider on the end of the screwdriver. Gamer's Nexus Halloween Spooktacular. Did that come out of here? See, if I had just done what Steve already did multiple minutes ago, it would have been so much easier. I'm not afraid of spiders per se, but I think this merits a little bit of spider cleanup before we go further. So I will get this a little bit organized and then we can start vacuuming some things. Spiders. Spiders everywhere. Ugh. Ugh. Did you see it? It like sailed out. It's on the clear plastic thing now. I'm not Australian. To me, that's a very large spider. The Papa spider. You ready? As a general rule, you should not vacuum your computer, but if it is full of dead spiders and spider webs and you found it in the woods, I think you can make a slight exception. How many, look, that's how many spiders were above the power supply shroud. There's no telling how many were below the power supply shroud. These are, I think by modern standards, fairly low power CPUs. They were, I think, 40 something watts at the high end if they're clocked up all the way, which these are not. These are 1.8 gigahertz. Okay, so it's mostly not that bad. Makes me a little more optimistic for the power supply. Doesn't look like it's too rusty along the top. This is what Louis Rossmann does, right? Thing of beauty. For the record, the actual board doesn't look too damaged. See whether it stays that way. All of this for 600 watts. Just so we both are aware, this is a stupid idea, but I'm running out of workspace. That's a lot of dead spider. I'm praying to the ghost of Steve Jobs to let me into the PowerMac.
Yeah, I think it's
Hey Steve,
Yeah.
guess how many watts this power supply is?
I don't know. Those two CPUs. I gotta say, like maybe 500.
It is 600 total, but it's split, so.
Oh, so not really. Is it 2 power supplies or 1?
It's one, but it's got,
That whole thing's the power supply?
yes.
What the fuck?
There's a 5 volt and a 3.3 volt. It has a bracket and it says total 150 watt max. And I mean, you
How
can.
much on the 12 volt? 12 volts. 12 volt 1, 2, and 3. Okay. So 14 amps is the most you get.
These, I don't think they have discrete.
Like 160 watts or something.
They aired it down, but I think these CPUs max out at like 40 something watts if they're clocked up all the way.
Okay. This power supply is insane.
Yeah.
This is like typical. This is typical Apple. Like, let's take something that everyone else can make a specific way, and then fuck it up so no one can fix it or swap it later.
Well, you've got 3 plugs. What more could you need?
Yeah. They kept, this is before they got to next level, like with the Radeon card, where they just do it all through the PCIe slot. That way no one can ever use that device anywhere else.
Boy. It's fine. Looks fine to me. I mean, it's dusty. No huge burn marks around the fuses or anything. On second inspection, that does look, that transformer does look a little rusty, maybe. So, if we have a problem with this power supply, it's not going to be from the tiny amount of dust and spider webs that are still in there. So we cleaned up the power supply. Off camera, I used some sandpaper to kind of wipe down this shroud cover, I guess you'd call it. It didn't get rid of all the corrosion, but it has smoothed it out, and it looks a lot better now, even if it's kind of stained down here. So the rustiest part of the computer by far is the, I guess this is just, it's not really an RF shield, it's just something to wedge the optical drive in. This must have gotten rained on or something, but if we look inside the drive, if it cooperates, it doesn't look terrible in there. I don't see any spiders, which at this point is the main symbol that something's gone horribly wrong. So I am going to tentatively say we should clean this up and put it back in there. We do have other DVD drives, but I'll give it a shot. Yes, this does come off. I just don't want to bend it. So, given that that is not a functional part and it's not externally visible, I'm going to call that good enough for now. I can clean it up more later as we're putting it back together, if we want to. These are held in by, as Keegan pointed out earlier, these are basically the same as what Noctua uses to hold in their fans. The idea being that it damps vibration and keeps noise down. I don't really want to take the fans off of these because they feel pretty sticky, and given past Apple products that I've owned, I feel like the plastic is probably dissolved. So I think we can leave these in place and just clean them right here. For what it's worth, there's not a ton of like dust in this system that you would get from actually using it. All the dirt we're seeing is from sitting out in the woods. There's not a ton of dust in the fans or in the power supply. Okay, this was the main CPU cooling assembly. And this, I think, went in front of the drives, but we'll find out when I try to put it back together. This is the one area where we actually see dust from the original system being used. Don't see a lot of three-bladed fans. Any horizontal surface where dampness could collect, there's a little bit of grime, but other than that, this was fairly high in the case and away from entrances, so it seems okay. Yeah, these rubber things, I feel like they might go back together if I take them out, but I really don't want to risk it. This is just going to get more dirty if I try to wipe it. Residue on the inside of this, but for the most part, this is just a cover and it's aluminum, so it's escaped from the worst of the elements. So this plate is obviously entirely external, so I think I am going to leave it at this level of progress for now, and if we want to clean it up more and get some of these dings and other marks out, we can do it with the case fully assembled. If you have to store your computer in the woods with no shelter, it seems like a PowerMac G5 is an okay candidate. So other than the internal components, pretty much, and the case, everything is clean. The internal components are also mostly clean. They just need to be dusted a little bit, and we can do that as we put the system back together. So the main focus now is to repair the obvious damage to the case and clean some of the dirt up from the case that we can get to. In typical Apple fashion, it's easy to get to what they want you to get to, and once we started trying to take out optical drive cages and stuff like that, it suddenly became very difficult. I think it's more effort than we want to invest, especially given that the top section of the case seems fairly clean. So we're going to leave it assembled and clean it as much as we can with it all together. I'm just taking out this rear fan assembly so that we can straighten out the damaged fan grill. Wow, I can't believe the many uses of this Gamer's Nexus toolkit. I just need it to be mostly straight. This honestly is just a distraction from the larger problem, which is this collapsed foot here. Now, this was originally attached with screws, and if the screws were what came out, then that would be easy to fix because we could just put the screws back in. But instead, the holes that the screws go into, the inset holes have popped out of the aluminum. So we don't have a great way to fasten this back on. We might end up gluing it, or we might end up just bending it back into place and leaving it. But either way, bending is the first step. It's like the crumple zone in a car. if you drop your PowerMac G5 in the woods from a great height, the feet will absorb the impact and leave your PowerMac completely functional.
So we're gonna break there because we have some AMD R3 and Intel 10 series launches coming up that will be long over by the time this video goes up. But we need to take a break there to do those. And when we come back for part 2, which will be the final part, it's gonna be reassembly, finalizing the clean, and getting this thing hopefully to be shiny. So subscribe to catch part 2. Go to store.gamersnexus.net if you wanna buy the mod mat that we worked on, which is also apparently a spider repellent mat, or you can go to patreon.com/gamersnexus. Thanks for watching. We'll see you all next time.